Hi everybody, my name is Keith Freeze, and I want to do a video about where I see the NHL going and how teams should be drafting accordingly to get there over the next handful of years. Um, and I'm going to kind of go outside of the NHL and hockey to make my point. But in the 90s, there was a pro wrestling company called WCW. And what WCW did was around 96, 97, they started bringing in a lot of luchadors and Japanese wrestlers and more technical, kind of skill guys. And they created this division called the Cruiserweight division. And it was insanely popular because it was just this huge deviation from what pro wrestling had mostly been at the time, which was, a much more slow, methodical storytelling, ring psychology based product. We'll get back to what ring psychology means, but basically, the cruiserweight division was just this huge separation from what had already been going on in pro wrestling at that time. Okay. Now, in the early 2000s, WWE or WWF, whatever, bought out WCW and they implemented the cruiserweight division there. And it was kind of like a lot of the same, but you saw that those cruiserweights that were coming in to the WWE, some of them had been in the WCW, but some of them that hadn't, they were brought up with that slower, more methodical storytelling, ring psychology based wrestling, and they were able to kind of like mirror or marriage the two ideas together in a really good way. Like the cruiserweight division in the WWE in the early 2000s was really good. Like it was high flying, it was exciting, but there was psychology, there was storytelling, it was kind of this nice mix, okay? And from that time, because everything kind of grows on itself, but from that time you ended up having, if you guys know wrestling, but it was like TNA wrestling had the X division, and that kind of was like cruiserweight, but then it was trying to go to the next level. The whole slogan was like, it's not about weight limits, it's about no limits, whatever. Anyway, but like you had TNA wrestling, and then you had Ring of Honor, and they were kind of all doing that kind of stuff. And then you had eventually now All Elite Wrestling. And I just want to say, as a fan of pro wrestling for a handful of years, I haven't watched wrestling in like 10 years because the truth is like it's just not entertaining to me anymore. It's just not. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just something I outgrew, but I just don't think that the product is as good. And a big part of that is because of the kind of wrestling that AEW is doing, and WWE is doing it a little bit too right now. Like, I've kind of like tuned in a little bit to see who the players are, but I'm kind of seeing it from both companies, but a lot more from AEW. But the bigger point is that you've got these guys wrestling now in today's world in AEW, in WWE, whatever, indies, doesn't matter. They're all taking the cruiserweight style and they are suspending the ring psychology aspect of it. Like, there's no ring psychology, there's no thought process as to a match anymore. Case in point, just so we have something to go off of here, but a big thing about ring psychology is hitting a finisher. Like, if I hit you with the Stone Cold Stunner, that's the finisher. So when I do that, it should lead to a 1-2-3. Now guys are taking 10 Stone Cold Stunners in a match because they all think that it makes them look good if they kick out. You know what I mean? So you have to hit 3 of them to whatever in the match. It's crazy. And it doesn't make any sense. There's like, not that doing a Stone Cold Stunner makes sense anyway. That's beside the point. The point is that there's a psychology, which is to say this is the finish of the match. Okay? So what happened is they took that high flying, I can do it, I don't need to do ring psychology thing anymore, and they threw that away in order to run around the ring and basically do nothing. Like they all think that it looks good because they're jumping off the top rope and, flying out to the outside doing flips and whatever, and it's entertaining, but even Cirque du Soleil has some bit of structure where you can't do that for every set at the circus. You know what I mean? Like the circus at least has some structure with all the high flying and the acrobatics and the aerials and whatever. Okay. So ring psychology, before I go back to like the hockey aspect of this video, but ring psychology is basically about how what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the audience to believe that what's happening in the ring is real. And in order to do that, if, let's say, for instance, back in the day, in the 80s, it was kind of becoming a really popular move, but somebody would do a DDT. For those who don't know what a DDT is, basically it's you hook a guy under your arm, like you kind of hook him. I'm trying to get on the camera here. Well, you hook him, okay? And then you basically spike his head down to the mat. And it was supposed to be like, you wrung his head. So the guy would kind of be knocked out for a little while. And the whole point of that was when you hit the DDT, you kind of let the guy lay on the ground for a while. And you kind of go out and you sell and you pose and you taunt to the crowd and whatever. Because the idea is you want the crowd to believe you really hurt this guy's head, right? But now there is no ring psychology. They do a DDT and the guy jumps right back up and he's fine and he's ready to go. So there's no ring psychology there anymore, right? So I guess I could say like for any older wrestling fan out there, like it would be akin to when Hulk Hogan would like Hulk up. Like it didn't make any sense either, but basically, there was a point in the match where Hulk Hogan was like getting really beat down and he had already been in the match for about 10-15 minutes. So he's already gassed in theory. But for whatever reason, he absorbs punches and he just, snaps right out of it. It's hulking up, right? It's kind of that same thing, but now it's in every match and there is no moment of even hulking up. Hulking up is actually ring psychology in a weird way. Kind of like this is the moment where I get it back, right? But there is no hulking up moment anymore. It's just they just act as though taking a headshot means nothing. Like there's just no ring psychology, okay? So basically what I'm saying is they've suspended all of that stuff in favor of just flying around. And there's no base of anything. Now, if you're kind of picking up where I'm going with this, I'm going to go back to the hockey aspect of it now. But there was the big trend within the last 10 years, I'd say, that teams want to get faster and more skilled. Fine. You need to be fast and you need to be skilled, okay? But when you lose the identity of what it is to play hockey, within that, what you're ultimately going to end up with in the next 10, 15, 20 years, if this trend doesn't stop, is that you're going to have guys that are uncoachable, unwilling to go hit, unwilling to take a check, unwilling to do all the things away from the puck that make the team successful. And, I've said it before, and this is not a slight against Trevor Zegras, but I've said it before, but basically I could see it in like 10 to 15 years where a guy is getting drafted and they'll typically ask draftees, they'll be like, who is your inspiration or who did you draw your game from or whatever. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, Patrick Kane or, whoever, right? But I can see people saying Trevor Zegras because Trevor Zegras offensively is just this his offensive creativity is insane. Like, it's so good, doing the Michigan or doing the alley-oop pass, or just when he's, even just moving north-south and he makes a nice pass to his teammates, whatever. Like, Trevor Zegras is offensively creative. And to anybody that says otherwise, like, you're just being a hater, or you're saying, yeah, he is, but, and it's like, okay, well, you just said, yeah, he is. So you're also admitting. So, let that one sink in. But Trevor Zegras is, I think, somebody that in a handful of years, draftees will say, I grew up being inspired and playing like Trevor Zegras. Okay. But that's all well and good. But you also have to grow up idolizing the guys that play a shutdown style. I'm wearing a Kings hat, and I don't think too many draftees would say like Philip Deneau was an inspiration. But what I'm saying is like, if you had a guy that came in and went, I have the offensive creativity of a Trevor Zegras while playing a two-way lockdown style like Phil Deneau, like, that's what you should want. That's kind of my bigger point. That's what made the cruiserweights in the early 2000s in WWE so successful, even in the X division with TNA, like in its early kind of stages, was that you had the high flying skill of Trevor Zegras with the ring psychology of Phil Deneau. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm painting the parable here. So there, comparison here. So what I'm saying is that ultimately you've got these two completely different industries, but they ultimately are showing you one result will lead to the other. So if you want skill and speed and you're willing to give up everything else, then the reality is like, it's just not going to work for you. It's a recipe for disaster. Go watch AEW and you will see what I mean. Okay? But if you want some of that skill with other stuff, you also now have to move the trend the other way with your roster construction starting today and go get bigger, go get more physical, play tough, play along the boards, take a check, win face-off, set screens, whatever it takes, block shots. All that defensive effort plus a little bit of that offensive touch is what you're really looking for. So this whole suspension of big and tough for skilled and fast is going to ultimately cost you if you don't implement some kind of size back into the mix at a later date. You're seeing that now with the Kings, like the last couple years, even when they went and got PL Dubois. Yeah, I know it's a sore subject, Kings fans, but I'm going to bring it up. When they went and got PL Dubois, he's a big guy, but he didn't play big. He was just a really good skater, and he's got skill. Okay? But they went and got that because they thought he's big and he's got skill and speed. It's a nice combination. It wasn't, but they thought that. Okay? So now that they got rid of PL Dubois, they instead went, we just need big and tough. Forget being, speedy and skilled. We just need to get tough. We went and got Joel Edmondson and Tanner Jeannot. Even I would say Darcy Kemper to an extent is like an aggressive physical goaltender. And I don't mean that he's getting into fights or checking people or whatever, but rather he just challenges shooters. He comes out of his crease a bit more. He's more stand-up. He's kind of like big body. Take a shot. I'm going to stop it. That's aggression in the form of a goaltender, okay? And all of that is old school pro wrestling. All of that is ring psychology. All of that is, whatever. So it's going back to the roots of what made things great, okay? So you can't lose that foundation. And this is why I'm saying that, like, going forward with all these drafts and stuff, we can sit there and go, oh my God, this guy is electric and he's whatever, okay? But at the end of the day, it's like, where's all the guys that aren't doing electric things? Like, I will say, at least for me, I've looked at this upcoming draft, the 2025 draft, and I'm seeing a lot of skill and speed, and I'm not seeing any size and ring psychology. That's That's the reality. And I think if I was a GM, I would not be opposed to taking a phone call about trading my first round pick. I'm just going to say that. But anyway, I think I made my point. The NHL has to start going back to a bit more size, a bit more physicality, just to make things work a little bit better. Okay? My name is Keith Freeze. Thank you for checking out this video. Have a great day, everybody, and go Kings go.